You look kind of down, Ash. Oh, have a donut. That always cheers me up. Pika pika!
These donuts are great. Jelly-filled are my favorite. Nothing beats a jelly-filled donut.
Welcome to another month of Fiction Kitchen. This month, we're making jelly-filled donuts. You might remember these from a certain episode of the original Pokemon series, where they looked suspiciously similar to rice balls. This might have been a weird choice from the dub team, but we're going to play this straight and make these jelly-filled donuts Brock's way.
I think it likes it.
That donut is my own special recipe.
To make these donuts, you'll need something to fry the dough in, like a large pot or cast iron skillet, as well as a cooking thermometer and a piping bag. I'm using one long filling tip for the jelly and a flat wide tip for the decoration on top. You can see a complete list of ingredients in the video description. I'm going to start forming my donuts the night before and then fry them up first thing in the morning. These donuts take quite a bit of time to make. To start, I'm blooming my yeast. Warm up 1/4 cup of milk in the microwave for 15 seconds, and add in 1 packet or 1/4 ounce of active dry yeast. Stir in about a teaspoon of sugar, then leave that bowl to the side. If the yeast is alive and well, the milk should bubble up and form a frothy foam in about 5 minutes. While I wait, I'm going to mix the other ingredients together. Starting with a 1/4 cup of water, I'm stirring in 3 tablespoons of sugar, 4 tablespoons or half a stick of butter, which I melted in the microwave, 1 teaspoon of salt, and 2 whole eggs. After 5 minutes, add in the milk and yeast mixture. Then slowly add in 2½ cups of all-purpose baking flour. I'm adding a bit at a time and mixing in between. I'm also switching from my whisk to a spatula as this dough gets thicker. When all the ingredients are well combined, the dough will hold its shape, but still be fairly sticky. At this point, it's time to knead. Prepare a clean surface with a thin layer of flour, and have half a cup of flour ready on hand. Drop the dough onto the surface and sprinkle some flour on top, and start kneading it all together with your hands. It'll still be sticky, so continue adding flour as you go. If you have a stand mixer with a hook attachment, feel free to use that instead of kneading. You want to get the dough to a point where it's not sticky on the outside and will hold a ball shape fairly well. You want to be able to poke the sides and see the dough spring back into shape, kind of like a memory foam mattress. Rub a little bit of oil on the sides of a bowl and then put your dough ball inside to rise for about an hour. I'm covering mine with a thin towel and leaving it under the bright oven light. After 1 hour, the dough should about double in size. Back on your floured surface, roll the dough out with a rolling pin until it's about 1/4 inch thick. I'm also trying to keep my dough in roughly a rectangle shape to make this next step easier. Cut out a series of triangles. I found the best way to do this is by cutting 3 parallel lines, then making diagonal cuts across those lines, like so. Mine actually came out a bit bigger than I intended. You should try to make yours roughly palm-sized. I'm also going to cut these scraps into bite-sized pieces to fry up alongside my donuts. If I was making ring donuts, these would be my donut holes. The scraps are useful for testing the icing, and they're also pretty tasty too. All of these go onto 2 baking sheets lined with parchment paper, which I'm putting in the fridge overnight. In the morning, I'll come back and fry them up.
Oh, it's a donut! A donut Pokemon?
Now that it's morning, it's time to get to cooking and decorating. Pull the dough out of the fridge and take it off the cold baking sheets to warm up to room temperature. You don't want to put your cold dough in hot oil. Pour enough oil in your deep pan or fryer to completely cover the donuts, about 2 inches deep. If you've got a baking thermometer that clips into place, clip it on now before you turn on the heat. It takes some time for the oil to heat up all the way, so turn the stove on high and wait. You want the temperature at least 350 degrees Fahrenheit and no hotter than 375. Keep a close eye on this thermometer as you're cooking. While you wait, set up a drying rack nearby. I'm using a cooling rack over another piece of parchment paper for easy cleanup. Once the donuts are room temperature and the oil is hot enough, use a slotted spoon to drop your donuts in. Turn the frying dough every 30 seconds or so, and watch it closely as it cooks. Once it's a delicious golden brown color, scoop it out with a spoon and set it on the drying rack to cool down. You can cook 2 or more at the same time if you're comfortable. I'm also frying up all my scraps in a batch. These take much less time to cook, but need to be watched closely. Once they're all done, turn off the heat and let your hot oil cool down slowly. Do not pour cooking oil down the sink. To throw it away, wait until it cools completely. Then pour the excess oil into an extra container, like a glass jar, to throw in the trash. It'll take some time for your donuts to cool all the way, so prepare the jelly filling and icing while you wait. For the icing, whisk 2 cups of powdered sugar together with 2 tablespoons of milk until you get a smooth mix. This covered about 5 donuts for me, so if you have more to cover, go ahead and double the quantities. I'm going to be honest, this icing was way too sweet for me, but I wanted to get a solid white coating on these donuts to make them look as much like rice balls as possible. You can make a less sweet version of this icing using less sugar or thinning it out with more milk. For the jelly, you'll need to grab one of your piping bags. You can use it on its own or drop in a long, thin piping tip for the filling. I'm spooning in a few tablespoons worth of raspberry jelly, then setting this bag off to the side. By now, the donuts should be cool. Grab a skewer or another long, thin object like a chopstick and poke a hole along one edge of each donut. I tried to choose the edge that looked most like the bottom of the rice ball because I knew it would get covered up later. Sweep the skewer around inside the donut to create a pocket for the jelly to fill, then carefully pipe in about 1 tablespoon of jelly. It's impossible to measure exactly, so just take a guess. You can always add more jelly later if you need to. If the jelly starts to spill out, just wipe it away with a finger. The rest of the jelly should stay inside easily for this next step. Now you're going to dunk the donuts into the bowl of icing, one at a time. Use a fork or a spoon to coat both sides, then carefully set the donut aside on your drying rack. Some extra icing will drip off, but that's what your parchment paper is there for. Because I thinned out my icing halfway through, some of these donuts aren't getting that white rice coloring. For these, I'm sprinkling on some extra powdered sugar using a sifter. Let the icing harden just a little bit while you prepare for the next step. Take some melting chocolate and melt it in the microwave, heating it for about 20 seconds at a time and stirring in between. When it's down to a smooth mix, let it cool for a little bit. I put mine in the piping bag right away and it just dripped right out the tip. Use a flat piping tip for the chocolate and angle it up so the melting chocolate doesn't drip out until you need it. Carefully pipe a single stripe down each donut, starting from the center and going down one edge. This is to simulate the strips of nori that rice balls are traditionally wrapped in. The excess chocolate will drip down onto your parchment paper, making it look like your donut is now wrapped in a strip of chocolate. Let these donuts finish setting on a piece of parchment paper or wax paper. At this point, these jelly-filled donuts are ready to eat. They're delicious and oh so sugary, and they're every Pokemon's favorite. Nothing beats a jelly-filled donut.